Content warning. The following content contains material which may cause discomfort and/or distress upon viewing. If you require support or need to report abuse, please call the 24-hour mental health crisis line at 239-1111. And if you need to report abuse, call the Child and Family Services hotline at 295-0011 or the Center Against Abuse, Domestic Violence, and Sexual Assault Victim hotline at 297-8278. Call 911 if you are in immediate danger.
SCARS presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Hi everyone, I'm Debbie Ray Rivers. I am the founder and executive director of SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. I am joined today with Dr. Alicia Hancock, a respectable clinical psychologist in our Bermuda community. And I'm also joined today with survivors. This is called Survivor Hour, and welcome. You know, we always say at SCARS that revealing is healing. So Sister Jara, thank you for revealing your secret. Thank you for being here today. Tell us your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How are you, Dr. Hancock?
I'm great, thanks. Glad to have you.
First of all, I would like to thank SCARS because I don't think another platform would have even given me this opportunity to do this. And you, Debbie, have been a great strength in my life. So thank you. And now I'm ready to tell some dark secrets that have been very hurtful in my life. And I'm ready to continue to heal all the way. So
proud of you. Thank you so much, Sister Jaro.
Thank you.
How has your sexual abuse impacted your life?
Unfortunately, it's still impacting my life. I didn't expect it to. I really didn't expect it to follow me into my 40s, but no matter what, you just have to continue to love yourself. Like, that's what I have learned, is that you just have to love yourself over and over and over again. We make a lot of mistakes in life. People beat us up, you know, and then if you're like me, we beat ourselves up. And as life's going on, you just have to realize that if you really, truly want to heal, you have to just continue to love yourself and be kind to yourself. So,
yeah, that's beautiful. And I agree with that as a survivor. As a fellow survivor, we do. We know what happened to us when we were little was not our fault and that we did nothing wrong. So thank you for sharing that. Why do you think child sexual abuse is so silencing?
It's very shameful. It's very shameful. The man that sexually molested me was a very trusted family member. And he was someone that was very respected. People looked up to this man. He was the oldest sibling in his family. And I mean, a very good, a very good person in the sense that his family looked up to him, respected him, and loved him. You know, and when you heard that somebody like that has molested a child, people don't really know how to take it. They don't really know how to deal with it, which is why a lot of people want to keep it in the closet. They definitely want to keep it in the closet or sweep it under the rug because it's just something that people don't even want to have to face. They don't want to face it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to have to deal with the shame and the guilt that comes with it.
So there's a lot of denial within the family.
A lot of denial. A lot of denial.
Which inevitably affects the child who is the victim.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because we can't really stop something that we don't deal with. We can't, the children need the accountability. They need to know that grown-ups are going to stand up for them and do the right thing. And the grown-up in your life did the right thing. From your story, it was revealed, and there was accountability and consequence. But I think the seriousness of sexual abuse, it gets played down when we don't realize that offenders are still dangerous.
They're very dangerous. They're very dangerous. And no matter what's the consequence, you have to stand up against them, because if you don't, they're going to do it again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they have the opportunity to, it's a real sickness.
Yeah.
It is a real sickness. And if you don't stand up to it, they have the opportunity to do it again. And I told my mom, as soon as it had happened to me, when it had happened to me, I instantly felt of the feelings of guilt and shame come over me. Those feelings instantly came over me, because I could have ran anywhere else, but I ran to my bed and I gripped my blanket and I just had it like this. I just laid out stiff and I had the blanket right up to her and I just stayed there. I don't know how long I stayed there for, but I just stayed there. And I remember saying, I'm not moving, because I just remember saying in my mind that something really bad has happened. Something really bad has happened. And my mom came home from work, and she instantly took a look at my face. Like, she instantly looked at my face, and she was like, what's wrong? Like, white stuff's come. Apparently I was foaming from the mouth.
How old were you?
11.
I ask you. You were 11 years
I was 11 years old. And it was a sunny day. I used to say I remember it like yesterday, but now I remember bits and pieces. It was a sunny day. My mother had to go work, so she left me in the care of the molester. And he was an alcoholic. He liked to drink. I don't know if he had been drinking already, but I know he wanted to go out for a drink. So I remember him saying, let's go get some ice cream. And we jumped on his bike, and he went downtown and bought his alcoholic beverages. And then we went and got our ice cream, and we drove around, and we came back to the house. And I think I was in the room, in my room, playing with toys or watching TV, whatever I was doing. And the molester called me. And because it was a trusted family member, I didn't hesitate. Yeah. So I went there, yes. And I went up to the molester, and I remember them telling me that I was very beautiful. You're beautiful, and you're a beautiful girl. And, I'm standing there in pigtails, just looking at this person saying, okay, like, I want to get back to my toys. Like, you know what I mean?
As a child would.
As a child, like, yeah. And this person's just telling me how beautiful I am. And then I remember them kind of like touching the back of my hair, like pushing my hair towards their face. And I'm still not realizing what's going on. And next thing you know, I feel this tongue all in my mouth, and I just remember like, what's happening? Like, I really remember having that emotion, like
confusion.
Confused, Hermie. I remember being confused, like the person had the tongue in my mouth. And then I think they was touching me in my breast area and touching me down below. And by this time, I'm like frozen with fur. I'm frozen. And the person said again in a stern voice, they was like, Roche. And they said, lay down on the bed. And I remember just, laying down like a soldier. Like, I just remember, stiff with fur, laying down like a soldier. And I remember the person taking down my pants. And then I remember them with one hand trying to unfasten their pants. And then I just remember this person trying to shove themselves into me.
How trapped did you feel?
At that particular time, I felt like I couldn't move. And it happened twice. The person tried to shove themselves into me and they couldn't get in. And then they tried again. They shoved themselves into me again and they couldn't get in. And then I just remember the person getting frustrated, like they got frustrated and just kind of like huffing and puffing, like sat up on the bed. And that was my cue. And I got up as quickly as I could. And I just like quickly walked into my bedroom and I just laid on the bed, like stiff as a board. And I just remember grabbing the blanket and just having the blanket up to her. And I just remember just saying like, you know, don't move. Whatever you do, don't move. And I stayed that way till my mom came here from work. I stayed like that till my mother came here from work.
Wow.
But my mother, with her motherly instinct, she instantly took a look at my face and was like, what's wrong? And I told her, I managed to get out the words, he touched me. I managed to get these words out, he touched me. And my mom, she took a quick minute to process it. I remember her face just being blank. But then like she said, okay. She said, okay. And she ran into the person and said, you know, Rashay, you know, I'm going to take Rashay with me down to the shop. I remember her saying she's going to go down to the shop. And she scooped me up right in the blanket I had covering me. She scooped me up in the blanket, put me in the car, took me down to the St. George's police station. And I remember us standing outside because you couldn't just enter. I think you had to ring some sort of bell or something. And I remember my mother ringing the bell, and I remember the police officer having some sort of interaction with her. And during that time, the molester drove across. They drove across and they gave my mother the nastiest look in the world. So they was fully aware of what they had done. And again, this was somebody that was highly respected by their family, by all their siblings. This was somebody that was the oldest sibling, and this was somebody that had a lot of common sense. So it's definitely a sickness.
It is.
It's definitely a sickness of the mind. And a lot of times, these predators, they think that they could get away with it.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
I believe they think that they could get away with it because the person that molested me had a lot of common sense. Like,
Do you believe that you were able to tell your mom right away because you had a safe and secure relationship with her, or because you were struck by fear and that immediately forced you to say something?
Both. I think my mother saw the fear in me when she walked into that room. Like, she's like, you know, this ain't my daughter. She's laying down on the bed with the covers over her. Like, my mother knew.
Your mom did the right thing. It wasn't the easy thing. She obviously knew this person, and it was a trusted family member, but she did the right thing.
And she taught me that lesson of me telling my mom, and my mom reported it. My mom, you know, sticking by me. I remember when I was in the hospital getting examined to make sure that it wasn't no full penetration. And I remember the doctor saying to my mom, you know, her hymen is still intact. That was the first time I even ever heard the word hymen.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember the doctor saying that to my mom, her hymen is still intact, which was why my molester only got 3 years. He didn't actually penetrate me. But my mom was there in the hospital. My mom kept me out of the courtroom. She was in the courtroom. She faced the molester. You know, he got 3 years. My mom saw all that through. But this being her family member, me and my mom were never close after that. We were never close.
And as you said, your relationship with your mom was impacted, so
Right.
it would be difficult for her to instill any discipline in
Right.
you.
I resented my mom for choosing to keep the family member in her life. because I said, okay, you had 3 years. This is how I was thinking as a young teenager. Like, you had 3 years to get away. He was locked up for 3 years. Why didn't you leave? And I had them thoughts for many years, even up to today. I had people in later years, like in my 20s, say, like my close friends say, maybe your mama was scared. Had 1 or 2 people say that, maybe that person would have killed your mom.
Right. We don't know that, right?
No.
We don't know why relatives of perpetrators and people who are close in their life decide to keep those people in their life, knowing that they sexually harmed the child in their life.
Yeah, sometimes there's dependency, there's fear, denial. Or
It's a
their
lot.
own trauma.
It's a lot that comes with it. But I could tell you, me and my mother's relationship was never the same.
Well, I guess it become difficult to trust your judgment.
Yeah.
After that.
Okay, everyone. Well, we're hearing stories of sexual abuse, and we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. As adults, we have a responsibility to protect children.
They're not capable of protecting themselves. They rely on adults to protect them. So it is up to us. We have a very huge responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that their needs are met, and that we have the knowledge on knowing what to do when something happens to them.
This message is brought to you by SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.bm. SCARS presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Welcome back, everyone. When we left off at the last segment, we were talking about behaviors, and I asked you, how did this impact you as a young person and into your teens? And you started talking about rebellion. Mm-hmm. That was the word that you used. Let's talk more about that.
I wasn't a rude child. I grew up, my mother and my father were quite strict. I wasn't rude, but after that experience, from the ages of 11 to 15, my mindset was nobody could say nothing to me. That was my mindset. My mindset was, I'm been through this terrible thing and I'm just gonna live my life. That's how I was thinking at,
we hear 13, that a lot.
14.
Yeah. And while it's very normal for adolescents in the pre-adolescence and adolescent phase to start challenging rules, challenging their parents, behaving a bit rebellious, many times it's amplified when children are traumatized. And then also, there are also internal consequences in terms of establishing an identity, and adolescence can get disrupted. And so you start seeing kids that have been through especially sexual abuse wanting to either change their bodies in some way, shape, or form, or try to change who they are and become somebody that they're not in order to protect themselves from feeling the impact of a victim. And you had mentioned that you, I see that your name is Sister Jaro. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Yes, I am currently going through a name change. My name was Roche Douglas, and now I want to change it to Jaro Calabras. my mom named me Rocher, which is French for rock. And I always knew that. So I always felt like I was a pretty solid,
Strong.
pretty firm person. But I think what ended up happening to me was that after I was so rebellious, I went upstairs, because it was a 2-story house. I went upstairs to live with my grandmother. And during the time I was upstairs living with my grandmother, I met my first boyfriend. And he came from a very loving home. He was very loving. He had dreadlocks. Daddy's locks touched the ground. Mama's locks came to her calf. Very, very loving person who opened up my eyes to just a whole different lifestyle.
Wow.
And that's how I got into becoming a Rastafarian at the age of 15. And one way that I was able to express myself was through poetry. I actually ended up writing a book, and I published it in my 2006. I don't know how old I was then, but I remember the date.
Wow.
And even though I was only with him for maybe 2 years, it has such an impact on my life, because had he not intervened, I think that I would have been even like more rebellious, because I already had that mindset that, something terrible's happened to me. Nobody out here understands it. And that was just my mindset. And then I met this young gentleman who really liked me and, took me home to his mom and dad, and the mom would have me in the house, and she'll be cooking sometimes and have the apron on me. And that was very healing to me, because it was like I went from just not caring about myself, like in a state of not caring, like in a state of destruction, and people really, really love me, and
Right.
people are really kind to me.
Right.
So
you were experiencing.
Yeah, my very, very first boyfriend had a great impact on my life, him and his whole family. And from there, I started to write poetry. I performed a few times in schools at assemblies. Like, I really
Yeah.
loved my poetry, and people started to call me Jaro.
Wow.
I fell in love with that name during the time that I was a Rastafarian, which was probably through the ages of 15 to my early 20s. I was a Rasta, and I fell in love with the name Jaro. So now, at this point in my life, just trying to heal, because it doesn't happen overnight. Healing is a gradual process. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes a whole lifetime when you're talking about heal. But with me, the type of person I am, I honestly want to get there. I don't want to say, I'm healing. I honestly want to get there. So this name change, I look at it like Rocher, and it's not a disrespect to my mama, because when I do change my name, officially change it, I'm keeping Rocher as my middle name.
Right.
It's not a disrespect to my mom.
Right.
But I look at Rocher like, Rocher, y'all been traumatized. Y'all been through a lot, love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like with my name change, it's almost like I'm giving you a rest. It's not like I'm gonna, if I walk out the door today and somebody said, "Hi, Rocher," it's not like I'm gonna be like, "My name's Jaro." It's not that. It's me just telling, "Oh, Rocher,"
Yeah.
just
So in your way, you're protecting her.
I'm protecting her, and I'm telling her, like, you've been through a lot. Like, just have a rest.
Yeah.
Have a rest now. Let Jaro take over. Like,
Yeah.
hurry, let the rock.
Yes.
Let the rock step in.
Yes.
And that's my reason to change my name. Is no disrespect to him. Like I said, people could call me Rocher till I die, and I will still answer to that name, as it's the name that my mom gave me.
Yeah.
But Jaro, it reminded me of days when I was happy, days when I was writing poetry,
Yes.
days when I was performing, days when people respected me. And that's what I prefer to be called, Sister Jaro, because I want to look at myself as everybody's sister. I'm not above anybody. I'm not below anybody.
Right.
I'm your sister. And I'm
Yeah.
a person, I'm always been very open.
Yeah.
I actually named my poetry book Open because of my personality. I was going to name it Open Soul.
Yeah.
And then I just calmed it down to Open.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're getting your power back. That's how
Yes.
I'm looking at this, as you getting your power back, because your healing began when you met that boyfriend and when you started receiving genuine love.
Yes.
And when you started using your poetry as a way to heal.
Let's take some of that love that you shared baby daddies and shared ex-husband and shared all these other people, and let's give some of that love to yourself.
Yeah.
So like I'm going to continue to grow and prosper despite what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that did not come overnight. I have highs and I have lows.
Well,
My
healing
life-
takes time, right? Healing takes time, and it's a
Yes.
different journey for every single survivor. I say it all the time. You know, on behalf of Scars, you know, Alicia and I, we just thank you. You are a rock for being here today and speaking your truth. That takes strength
Courage.
and courage. Well, everyone, revealing is healing. Awareness is so important. We can't stop talking about this issue. The sexual assault of children is preventable, and we all have a part to make sure that we do what we can, that we react responsibly, that we recognize signs, that we talk about this issue, that we understand this issue. Okay, everyone, so don't go anywhere. We are going to come back with another survivor story. We're going to learn. We're going to see this issue through the eyes of our survivors. So this is Survivor Hour, and we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. Talking about it is very important for healing, but it can be a very difficult conversation to have.
There is no doubt that this is a risky topic. We know about it, but we don't want to talk about it. On the other side, it is a hot potato topic as well, that we just prefer to send it to throw it to somebody else. If we want to heal as society, as church, as society generally, we have to be able to touch the wounds of the past.
This message is brought to you by Scars, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.bm.
Content warning. The following content contains material which may cause discomfort and or distress upon viewing. If you require support or need to report abuse, please call the 24-hour mental health crisis line at 239-1111. And if you need to report abuse, call the Child and Family Services hotline at 295-0011 or the Center Against Abuse, Domestic Violence, and Sexual Assault Victim hotline at 297-8278. Call 911 if you are in immediate danger.
Scars presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Survivor Hour, and we are saving children and revealing secrets through the stories and through the eyes of our survivors. Our next survivor is, I consider you a friend.
Yes.
I really do. This is Mickey Parfit,
Yeah.
and I just want to say welcome, Mickey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, I know that you recently, and I supported you recently through your own case of childhood sexual abuse.
Yeah.
As an adult, you had the power and the courage and the bravery to make that report.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that?
For me, it was the anger. I endured a 13-year drug addiction directly after my child sexual abuse, which stemmed from 11 till I was 17 years old. And I ran away from home. I had my first kid by 18. By that point, everything was just a crazy mess. And I had this 13-year drug addiction. And about 5 years into my recovery, I started noticing like how angry I was. Like, I was shouting all the time. And I mean like shouting to the top of my lungs. I mean, crazy things like my house wasn't perfectly clean. Like I was so obsessed on cleaning, keeping my house clean, you know. And I heard my neighbor go across my bathroom window one morning, and she says, "Why does she always have to scream first thing in the mornings?" And I was like, wow. And my mom used to do that my entire childhood. She was very aggressive. She was a breadwinner, you know, she was almost like a single mom the entire time, you know, but she had a lot of stress on her head. So that was something, a learned behavior that I had from my childhood, you know. So hearing my neighbor say that as she walked across my bathroom window, I was like, wow, I'm doing the same exact thing to my family that my mom had done to me, you know. So I started counseling again. Talking about my abuse, because my counseling in the beginning wasn't talking about my abuse. It was talking about my addiction and running straight into a 13-year drug addiction to being a full-time mother right away. You know, that was a huge transition for me. So going through counseling and understanding that, like, this anger was something that I needed to work through, and I needed to actually work through my trauma. So I went and made a police report. I had been in bed, I was depressed, I was angry. Like, sometimes I would just lay on the couch for hours and not have the TV on. My mind is just going, you know what I mean? And I just couldn't do it anymore, you know? And I made my statement to the police about 5 years ago now. It was 5 years ago that I made my statement. And it was a process, you know, it was a process. But that was the start of me actually speaking up and talking about my sexual abuse, even with my family, finally starting to have those conversations and saying, like, hey, this is what happened to me. There wasn't just the addiction, because that's all that people saw. Right. People just saw this, excuse me, quote unquote, crackhead. You know what I mean? Because that's what I was referred to as. Right. Nobody considered, like, nobody ever asked me, like, why? What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? So that was the reason, was just the anger.
Wow.
You know, and I still struggle with that anger today. I protected my abuser until 5 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Somewhere,
a huge burden.
somewhere when I ran away, because I did run away on my 17th birthday, one of my abusees, is that what you? Someone that my abuser was also abusing came to my house.
Oh, wow.
Another survivor.
On my 17th birthday, and she asked me, she was like, is this man touching you? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, he will take care of me. You know, because somewhere in between 11 and 17, it transitioned from being my abuser to almost being my 30-year-old boyfriend, which was what I was labeled as.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
About why you didn't tell. You know,
Right.
Why.
And so yeah, I protected him. Somewhere in between, after I left my mom's house, I did go back and I told her. But by that time, I was just so angry. I didn't care what people had to say to me. You know, I had finally gotten away from my house, and yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, these behaviors are what we talk about all the time in our training. You know, what we've heard is, you know, anger, you know, runaway behavior. We talk about that in our trainings. We talk about depression. We talk about drug addiction.
Yeah, and
I mean-
a lot of these behaviors kind of allow you to protect the pain and the impact of the abuse.
Well, that's what it really was. I mean, now as an adult, I understand why my coping choice was drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean? I numbed myself for 13 years. So that's why it literally took 5 years after I stopped doing drugs, for those emotions to start showing up, because I was just focused on trying to be the best mom that I could be. You know, and
You were
it's
just surviving,
crazy.
right?
Yeah,
Just surviving.
exactly. And it's just crazy how that creeped up on me, you know, and in my adult life. And it really threw me back, you know?
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about here recently is, you know, how you've seen it impact your adult relationships, or even after 17, what you've seen within your relationships in terms of what lingered. You know, hypersensitivity to certain emotions, feelings, rejection, abandonment. Yeah.
I suffer big time from abandonment, and
Yeah.
all these years, I couldn't tell you, for years, I've been searching for what is it that I'm feeling inside, from counselor to counselor to, and nobody could tell me until I came across this one counselor who, has a, similar background to mine. And she just, she was like, you're suffering from abandonment. And then she just kind of broke it down for me, and everything was something that I related to. And I'm like, wow, when my friends go out and they don't invite me, that's huge for me.
You feel
And
huge rejection.
I actually left a chat group last year, which I spoke to Debbie about, because I was, it's hard for me with friendships because I had that abandonment issue. If I'm not included, it's almost like I'm not now because I'm aware of it. But before, it's almost like I was the big kid. Like, why are you not inviting me? And I felt like that's how my friends saw me. And it started triggering me so much that I actually left this chat group that I created for myself so that I could have a support system when I'm down in the dumps, and it's because of that. It's triggers, and I wasn't understanding why my own friends are triggering me. And then, just going and finding the right counselor was huge for me.
And learning when you're like misreading cues and misreading
Exactly.
people's intentions and behaviors.
Exactly.
And when it might be a reasonable reaction versus an overreaction.
Exactly. And that's
So that you don't push everybody away.
But I feel like since I made a conscious decision to turn my life around from drugs, you know what I mean, that it has been very much like my behavior, like certain things I have to change, you know what I mean? I a lot of times was reactive, you know what I mean, instead of just being responsive, you know what I mean? I still do that sometimes, I'm still a work in progress.
Well, I think you also can function from a place of disappointment. So the anticipation of being disappointed or betrayed.
Anxiety way up, and
when you have expectations, especially
exactly,
and they're not met, we take that on as ourselves because we had expectations of the people who were in our life when we were little, who were supposed to care and protect us, and they didn't do that. That could follow us in our adulthood. That and it's separating the two. Not everybody is that. There are people in our life that just want to make their own choices, and that's okay. It doesn't always mean betrayal.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially from those that were supposed to provide unconditional love and protection, and when they don't, it gets even more difficult to think that the outside world will do that.
We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, Mickey, we're going to talk about as you reflect back, was there anything that adults could have done different that might have recognized some of those signs and what was going on in your little life? So we're going to take a break, everyone, and we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. Did you know that we should always be aware and take notice of changes in a child's behavior?
Well, one of the first and most highlighted ways that indicates potential sexual abuse or any abuse is when a child is behaving differently. If a child is behaving differently, that's the first sign that something's wrong and it needs to be addressed.
This message is brought to you by SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.bm. SCARS presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Thank you for coming back, everyone. We are talking to one of our very brave survivors, Mickey Parfit. We're so grateful that she's here. The first segment, Mickey, you talked about the aftermath of the abuse, your drug addiction, and some of the things that, understandably so, that you have struggled with. Tell us about what happened. Tell us your story of abuse.
So my abuser was introduced to me by a close family member, actually. When this man was introduced to my family, I think he saw the vulnerability, you know, and over a short period of time, kind of just, I guess, brainwashed me into thinking that this was okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? Although I was told I should never tell anybody, but it's okay, right? The first attempt was after a Dracula movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula. And my siblings and I used to love watching horror movies together. That was the one thing they would do with me, because we have a big age gap between us, but they would watch horror movies with me. So I was so excited to go see this horror movie. And at that time, my sister had moved out, wasn't living with me. And when my abuser took me back home, because by that time he was living in my house.
Oh, wow.
In a room in my house, and took me home and parked the van in the yard and made his first move on me, for which he was unsuccessful, the first attempt. It was just touching and fondling.
Well, it was successful in his eyes.
Exactly.
and it was not good for you, even that part.
And within a short period of time again, he was able to have sexual intercourse with me.
Wow.
And
how old were you?
With me. I was 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about sexual abuse is, like, from the age of 11 to 17, the thousands and thousands of times that I had to have sex with this man. And I remember not going to school for so long.
Wow.
I would hide in this cave on the railway trail.
What were you feeling?
And, like, just alone.
Yeah.
Just alone. Till this day, like, that's probably my most hardened memory, is what I was doing to just try to be safe.
Right.
You know? And that cave is still there.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
But I dropped out of school when I was 16 because I just couldn't deal with the stress. And I tried to commit suicide. I went to child and adolescence. I tried to commit suicide at home one day. My mom came home and found me, called the ambulance. I started child and adolescence. Went on antidepressants. My abuser got a hold of them.
Wow.
And because I was now 15, 16, and I'm like, I'm starting to like boys my own age. I want a boyfriend my own age. I want to do things that other kids are doing. You know what I mean? And I wasn't doing any of that. Like, my childhood, my adolescence was none of that, you know?
How old was he when you were 11?
Oh my God.
Do you remember?
27, 28, something like that. You know?
So he essentially stole the majority of your adolescence.
He took my entire adolescence,
Yeah.
not the majority of it. He took my entire adolescence. And when he got a hold of my antidepressants, I've got the magic key. So whenever I would act up and whenever I would rebel against him, he would be like, I've got the magic key. You need to take a pill.
Wow.
So I denied myself medication for the majority of my adult life and young adult life because of that, you know, and
Yeah.
She controlled and manipulated.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And, you know, somewhere in there, he touched people in my family,
Wow.
you know?
Let me ask you a question. Looking back now, was there anything that you would have wanted to see adults do differently? The adults in your life, any teachers? Like, did people just not pick up on the signs, you think?
You
or
know,
you were missing from school? I mean, no, that would not happen today because so much, you know, we've done so much good in terms of awareness, but
the crazy thing is that it seemed like everybody in St. George's knew what was going on in my household and was using it as a conversation piece instead of speaking to the right people. I was so traumatized by that. I've never moved back to St. George's since. When I left, I was like, you know, like my aunt and her friends, and you would hear the buzz because they would come back to me, and I was labeled the girl with the 30-year-old boyfriend, and then people start talking about what was going on in my house, and And then all of it end up being true. And I'm like, but how did you guys know? And you didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
You're
Thought it
just
was
sitting
okay.
off amongst yourselves, but with regards to my parents, I don't know how to feel, honestly.
Yeah. Do you think, Mickey, because of the lack of awareness and education around this topic, that people would have been one of the reasons people didn't react responsibly? I think from what I've heard from the thousands of survivors, there were people that didn't really even know it was wrong. They didn't see anything wrong with it. They blamed the children. Why grown adults would want to have relationships with young children? Was it because they weren't aware. There was no education. And that's how I felt why I started this organization, because I could not understand why the grown-ups in our life were reacting that way to our own case. Do you think that was the case?
Yeah,
years
I
ago?
mean,
People
even
didn't
my
know?
abuser took me in spaces where he would treat me the way that he would treat me behind closed doors, and there were other adults around. You know what I mean? So that's crazy. I mean, I brought that up in my trial. I was like, listen, I know that these people knew what was happening to me, because he would be this way with me in front of, like, totally not different. And I know the difference because when we were in front of other people, I was just a child. Just go sit over there and sit down and wait till I'm done. Just like an adult and a child, right?
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to stand up and we have to intervene when we see adults not doing the right thing. When we see children that are in pain, we have to look out for those signs. And that's why education is so important. We didn't have that years ago, and there's no excuse now. Now we are providing this platform for people to understand that it is not okay to sexually harm children and use children for your own sexual pleasure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. You're so brave.
Thank you.
Adults should have intervened.
Adults should have intervened. I mean,
What would
You know,
what would have been helpful for an adult to do or say at that time?
it would have been helpful to know that this man actually had previous interactions with a child, and that the public, some of the general public actually knew that he was a pedophile. So we have this, do we have this register now? We have this register for sex offenders.
It's not public, but we have one.
But like years ago, that could have saved my life.
Right.
I'm hoping, because, even I heard the buzz, and obviously in my later teen years or whatever, that, this man was known for this, so yeah.
Yeah, we have to understand that a sex offender is not safe.
No.
A child sex offender is not safe around any child.
Yeah.
Alone.
Yeah.
Ever.
And we need to talk more about this, so we actually know these people, because there are still people out there, they're free, they're out and about still doing what they're doing,
Or that just because they've been to jail or had a consequence, that it's not a done deal.
Exactly.
It's not over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that a sex offender doesn't stop with one child. This is a sickness.
Yeah, he was already locked up for indecent exposure, and I was, at the time, I didn't pay too much attention about it, because I actually was, hooked on drugs and things like that. But after I turned my life around, and somebody told me that, and I was like, are you serious? A slap on the wrist. And that just even added fuel to the fire for me of like why I needed to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why I needed to take him to court and stand up for myself.
Yeah, and protect other children.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, everyone, we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. It's important to take note of a child that is acting out or frustrated. These can be reactions to trauma.
So it's important for teachers to understand that when a child is acting out, or when a child is behaving irrationally or seemingly irrationally, when a child is angry or upset or frustrated, and it seems to be at an extreme level, these can be reactions to trauma.
This message is brought to you by SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.bm.
Content warning. The following content contains material which may cause discomfort and/or distress upon viewing. If you require support or need to report abuse, please call the 24-hour mental health crisis line at 239-1111. And if you need to report abuse, call the Child and Family Services hotline at 295-0011 or the Center Against Abuse, Domestic Violence, and Sexual Assault Victim hotline at 297-8278. Call 911 if you are in immediate danger.
SCARS presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back. If you've just joined us, we are sitting with a very brave and courageous survivor. This is Survivor Hour, and we thank you for being here. We've been talking to Mickey Parfit about your journey of child sexual abuse. And, you know, you touched on, well, we've been learning about why children don't tell. That's one of the things that we teach, right, in our prevention education curriculum. And there are many reasons, you know, fear, confusion, you know. But one of the things that you touched on was protecting the offender, the perpetrator, the pedophile. Talk to us about that, about what that really means. Unpack that for us, because we know child sex offenders groom, and they you know, they're very manipulative. Talk to us about that.
So I was definitely groomed, you know, from my first sexual interaction, you know, with this man, and over that 6-year period that I was molested, you know, that relationship obviously changed over time. You know, from the jump, I was told to never tell anybody, but I end up wanting to protect him because he was the only person giving me attention. You know, everybody was so busy with their lives, and I was just like this one that just kind of was left out. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I always felt. You know, and he gave me the attention. You know, he gave me something that I needed. I mean, he had anything that I wanted, I would get. I went on shopping sprees at 13 years old where I was spending $1,200. You know, I'd seen times when this man would pull out $10,000. Probably the only time in my life I've seen $10,000 in cash, you know, and would like peel me off, you know, a couple hundred. And I'd be happy, you know, and it's just from the way that he would treat me, you know, it was because I had a strained relationship with my mom. My mom was a provider, very kind of angry, bitter woman, you know. Dad always out, you know, I was craving that, I think, that attention, you know what I mean? And and he gave that to me. So it, from me being this 11-year-old girl to almost 17 years old, that whole grooming and manipulation changed into when I was 17, I actually thought this man was my boyfriend.
Wow.
And that was a really hard thing for me to accept in counseling. You know, it was like, wow, you know, it wasn't a forced, he didn't force himself on me. And that's very important to remember, is that like, I allowed him to enter my body. You know, I was groomed to and manipulated to let him, and almost brainwashed to let him do what he was doing to me. And in the end, you know, all I wanted to do was please him.
Well, and I think, you know, many times, you know, obviously for him, he provided you with a consistent emotional void that wasn't being filled. And many times, as you went through, the perpetrators will cultivate a relationship where you become attached and dependent.
Yeah, very much so. Very attached and very dependent. You know, that was like, ended up being my person, you know, throughout my adolescence. You know, my mom, I just, you know, it was crazy. It's hard to put into words as an adult, and I think sometimes it's hard to even accept, you know, that wow, like somebody can actually do that to
Yeah.
me. You know what I mean?
But you were 11. I want
Yeah.
to go back to
Yes, I have to
audience.
remember that.
We have to understand.
I
Think
do.
about an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Prepubescent.
Prepubescent.
Yeah.
How much they've been in the world for 11 years.
Yeah.
They don't understand manipulation. They don't understand being groomed.
Yeah.
You had no idea.
Exactly.
He was filling a void, as Dr. Hancock mentioned, as
Exactly.
Alicia mentioned. He was filling that void.
Yeah.
But you were 11 years old.
Yeah.
And
I
we,
have
we
to
can
remember
never
that
forget
sometimes,
that.
yeah.
We can never forget.
Because I can be hard on myself as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
sweet. And please don't be, because you
Yeah.
were a little child.
Yeah,
You were
I
a
was.
child. And this is what we have to remember. These are grown adults. They know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And as a mom now, I'm just like, yeah.
Well, you rely on adults to guide
protect you and guide
to
you.
protect.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you trust their judgment that their actions are not going to harm you.
Yeah.
That whatever they do is not
Yeah.
supposed to harm you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, in a way, when I listen to the fact that he gave you money, he was paying for sex. But that is what that is. When you have to pay for sex,
Yeah.
child exploitation, it goes beyond. It is manipulative, deceitful, and I'm just so proud of where you have come in your journey,
you.
Mickey.
I am too.
And
Thank you.
you are explaining it perfectly to our audience. What this, through your eyes, what you had to live with.
Yeah.
And this is the whole idea of this show, is to help our audience see through the lens of a survivor,
Yeah.
of a child.
Yeah. Every survivor has a story.
Yeah, definitely. And you can get past it. You can fight for your life. You can stand up for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you've survived child sexual abuse. You've survived a drug addiction. I mean, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So after I left my house at 17 years old, I never went back and started working. I never believed that anybody wanted to have sex with me because they actually liked me. Like they just maybe thought I was cute, or maybe I had a cute body or something like that. You know what I mean? So I thought they saw me as a vehicle too. There was never no connection, when it came to sex. But I'm here young. I've never had the chance to really spread my wings.
Right.
And, I go to my first nightclub and I start experiencing things whilst I'm a young mother, right? Whilst I'm working, all of this. And I started experimenting in drugs, marijuana, cocaine, crack, ecstasy. Drug addiction is progressive. You know what I mean? I definitely progressed. My oldest sister, honestly, was the one person that has always been there for me throughout this. Yeah.
A protector.
Yeah. Still to this day, she is,
Yeah. I just think years ago, we just did not talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't understand addiction. We didn't understand sexual abuse. We had these expectations that people were just supposed to get over it and get on with it. And now, that's why education and awareness is so important. That's
Yeah.
why stories are so important. It helps us learn about this because we want to do better.
Yeah.
And we can't do better if we don't know better, if we don't learn. Testimonies are important and they're powerful, and it's not about shaming. People have to, we want people to own their own stuff, but, this is about, you now have a voice.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also about accountability so that, as a community, we can grow.
Yeah.
You can't grow without accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that everything is interrelated and interconnected.
Oh,
we have
correct.
to understand the domino
Yeah.
effect and stop looking at people and judging them and think their story, because
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
so many stories.
Versions. Lots of versions.
Lots of
So
versions.
many. And it's just completely opened my eyes to
Yeah.
the real pandemic here in Bermuda. And I
Yeah.
even had one of my counselors say that to me one year. He's like, the real pandemic is child sexual abuse here in Bermuda.
Around the world.
Yeah.
I just
Well,
want to say.
yeah, maybe around the world,
Because,
but I mean, for
because
here-
sexual abuse is no different in Bermuda
Yeah.
than it is. I always say that because
Yeah.
I have heard survivor stories from all over the world. But we're small. And
Yeah.
maybe the reason why we don't talk about it as much, or we've been hiding it under the rug, is because we are so small. We all know each other. We are related. This is shame on brings shame to families, shame to people. But we can't change if we don't talk about it. So thank you. We're gonna take a break, and we're gonna be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. Always keep in mind that it may be difficult for a child to express what has or is being done to them by a perpetrator.
In my experience, it has been often tough on the surface to figure out that what a child is experiencing is that they're being abused or sexually abused by a perpetrator. And that's often because the signs and symptoms that they show sometimes aren't as clear as you think they might be. Kids don't have rules about how to deal with this kind of stuff. And they're worried about getting in trouble. And they're worried about what happens. And this is an uncomfortable conversation for adults. So I can't imagine how tough it would be for a child to explain any of this stuff in a way that would make sense.
This message is brought to you by SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.pm. SCARS presents Survivor Hour, where survivors of child sexual abuse share their stories, their journey, and their path to healing in the hopes that by revealing their secrets, they can inform our community and help to save our children from child sexual abuse.
Welcome back, everyone. We are here today. This is called Survivor Hour, and we are hearing very difficult but important stories of sexual abuse, of childhood sexual abuse. Our stories are so important. Revealing is healing. We are here right now with Mickey Parfit. And I just want to say to you, Mickey, thank you for sharing your story. I always say, and I tell my children this, there's always purpose in pain. Mm-hmm. And I just want to applaud you for taking your pain and turning it into a purpose. And so I want you to share with our audience how you have done that.
Well, I've done a few things. So this March, I founded a support group called Empower Me Bermuda.
Wow.
And basically it's a support group based on that. It's empowering ourselves, finding our voices, using our own internal wisdom for healing, support of fellow women that are also looking to heal, it's growing. There are so many women that things have happened to, and they just want to be heard. They just want a place to talk and be heard. And so right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm just wonderful. Providing a safe space for women to have a voice, to build your voice, to know your voice is valid, to affirm yourself, and that's something that I've learned over the last 10 years of trying to turn my life around.
Sometimes we don't know what's going on in someone's life. I want to say we have male survivors out there.
Yeah, we do.
We have a lot of male survivors who also need support. Sexual abuse doesn't discriminate. We have female survivors, we have male survivors.
Yeah.
And they need our support too. Yeah. We have male perpetrators and we have female perpetrators. I've heard the stories of female perpetrators. It's shocking, but it's true. A sex offender can be anyone, and a victim, a survivor, can be anyone. But I am so proud, and I know you are too, Alicia, for your journey of healing and what you've done with your pain, and for you sharing your journey, so that our audience can see your pain through your lens.
I've also, over a 5-year period, I started a fundraising event called Ride for Recovery. And that was specifically geared towards Focus Counseling Services. Focus Counseling Services was a safe haven for me. And it's crazy that they are struggling right now to keep their services open because they are an open door. And the difference between Focus and Women's Treatment Center is I had to go to like 13 appointments to gain entry into Women's Treatment Center. At any point in time in that, I could have said, forget this, I'm going back out, the whole time I was still using, but to get to those 13 appointments, like I really had to tell on myself and say, listen, this is what I'm doing, but you're going to have to find me to come get me, to take me. You know what I mean? Versus Focus, I can just go there and walk in the door. I can get a plate of food. You know what I mean? If I stay there long enough, I can get a Narcotics Anonymous meeting.
Yeah.
There's people there that are suffering and we can sit there and talk. And so I saw this. And when I had the ability, I became a spinning instructor because I found out physical fitness is my thing. I love it. It helps with my anxiety and depression, as well as my anger. It's a good coping mechanism and release for me. And I founded the Ride for Recovery, and over a 5-year period with the huge support of Dwayne Streaker Adams through Streaker's Spin Studio, raised over $20,000 to feed the people in focus.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of that. And I'm actually working on another Ride for Recovery that will be huge. Like, I'm going to push it out to corporations. And because, I mean, 5 years to raise $20,000, and like, we need more. We need to recognize how everything's interrelated and interconnected, because these people are suffering just like I have.
Yeah.
And when you bring up the man, you know, there's so many men on our streets, you know, just like I had to use my body to support my habit, you know, there's a lot of people out there doing that. And so there's, you know, everybody, but it's stemming from something.
Yes.
Right. You know?
Yeah. And we each have a part to play.
Exactly.
You know, in this community. And I am so glad you talked about focus counseling. You know,
they're near and dear.
They
to my
are
heart.
near and dear to my heart as well, and they need a lot of support, financial support, because they do a lot of great things.
It's a vital resource.
It's a vital resource for those, and for many who also have suffered many traumas in their life, and have turned to drugs to cope, to feel, you know, to numb out, to not feel. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that.
And just one more thing. So I'm actually studying to be an addictions counselor right now.
Wow.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it just so happens, like, my counselor, it sits on the board, and it's crazy, like, how right now in my life everything's finally coming together. And I was so fearful for years of stepping into this purpose, because I'm like, what about rejection? Like, I'm not good enough. And this year something just came over me, and I was like, you know what? I'm using my voice.
Yeah.
I'm saying whatever needs to be said.
And you
not
did.
Being quiet anymore.
You did in that courtroom. That was the beginning.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So proud of you. Well, everyone, I know this is a heavy topic. We've heard pain, but the good news is that we can journey from victim to survivor. We can take our pain and turn it into a purpose. And we can prevent childhood sexual abuse. Please do the right thing. Please intervene. Please watch out for children's behaviors. Please get educated in child sexual abuse. Learn everything you can to protect the little one in your life. It's vital for their life, for their teen years and for their adulthood. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this hour.
Many times a perpetrator will not look like a bad person. In fact, in most cases, they don't.
Concept to remember is that there's this common misconception that perpetrators tend to look like the bad guys in a cartoon movie, right? When you watch a cartoon movie, you see a very clear distinction between the good guy or good girl and the bad guy and bad girl. The bad guy acts like a bad guy, talks like a bad guy, walks like a bad guy, looks like a bad guy. That's what happens in cartoon movies, but that's not a reflection of real world.
This message is brought to you by SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets. Our objective is to raise awareness of child sexual abuse in Bermuda and its devastating effects on both children and their family members. Join thousands of Bermudians who have been certified and recertified. To get certified, call 297-2277 or email info@scars.bm.